Watching PBS Hawaiʻi, supported by viewers like you. It's not just storytelling, it's culture. PBS Hawaiʻi, home is here.
Local broadcasts of Insights on PBS Hawaiʻi are made possible by the support of viewers like you. Mahalo, and by Carl Smith Ball, providing legal services throughout Hawaii and the Pacific since 1857, making a positive difference in the communities where we live and work. Hawaii's population is rapidly aging, with 1 in 4 expected to be 65 and older by 2035. A new report by the University of Hawaii details how this aging population presents significant economic challenges for our state. The gap between what seniors consume and what they earn will more than double in the coming decades. So what can be done to help our aging population? Join the conversation next on Insights.
Aloha and welcome to Insights on PBS Hawaii. I'm Lauren Day. A recent study entitled Aging in Hawaii's Generational Economy, published by the University of Hawaii Economic Research Organization, or UHERO, explored the impact our state's aging population will have on our economy and society. 1 in 4 residents will be over 65 in 2035. Those individuals consume the most resources of any segment of the adult population while bringing in the least, and that impact is felt by all of us. So what can be done to meet the needs of our super age members of society? We look forward to your participation in tonight's show. You can email or call in your questions, and you will find a live stream of this program at pbshawaii.org and on the PBS Hawaii YouTube page. Now to our guests in studio. Andy Mason is an Emeritus Professor from University of Hawaii at Manoa. He's a researcher at UHERO and authored the report, Aging in Hawaii's Generational Economy. We'll dive into that in a bit. He is an Associate Editor of the Journal of Economics of Aging and the Journal of Demographic Economics. Kealiʻi Lopez has been the Hawaii State AARP Director since 2019. She served as the chairperson for the Democratic Party of Hawaii. She also served as the Director of Hawaii State Department of Commerce and Consumer Affairs from 2010 to 2014. Wang is the Executive Director of Housing Hawaii's Future, an organization dedicated to ending the state's workforce housing solution. He has 14 years of local commercial and residential real estate experience and an MBA from Scheidler College of Business at the University of Hawaii at Manoa. And Michelle Bartell is the President and CEO of Aloha United Way, whose mission is to improve lives through community-driven solutions. Prior to her appointment, she was the Senior Vice President and Director of Community Advancement at American Savings Bank. Andy, I want to start with you and a little bit about your research. Tell us some of the key findings that you want the community to be aware of.
Okay, let me start out by mentioning that the Department of Business, Economic Development, and Tourism was very supportive of this study, and it couldn't have happened without their efforts. They were great to work with. So the shock to me in this study, the first thing was that the 75 and older population was growing so rapidly, and more rapidly than it ever has. And this is a challenge for us in particular because when we talk about solutions, some of them are not so easily implemented when we're talking about a population that's 75 or 80 or 85. So it's harder to engage people more in the workforce. They're more likely to need a lot of health care. They may face a lot of income insecurity in the future. They don't pay taxes as much as they have. And so there are a lot of these pieces that when we put them together, we think, well, how are we going to ever deal with this? The other thing, though, I want to say is that when we talk about super aging, I think we should talk about aging people who are super. Mm-hmm. So there are a lot of people in Hawaii, kūpuna, who are really contributing to our society in many ways. They're helping their children, they're working, they're helping their communities in just endless ways. And I don't think we want to overlook the fact that we have a great resource in the growing senior population in Hawaii.
How do you define super aged?
Oh, I don't know. 75 and older, I guess. I don't, you know, I think the UN may define that as 75 and older. I think I said that for this report or maybe for this presentation, but it's, you know, it's all gradual. You find out when you get to be like my age. I'm a little older than 75. Am I super aged now? Well, I think I was super aged more when I was 74, but still super aged now.
I know for everybody here on tonight's panel, the research and study that Andy did here is not surprising. We all know that our community is getting older. Andy, and then I'll open up the panel to some other questions. Was there anything, though, in your research, in your study, that was surprising to you that you found?
Well, when we started this work about 5 years ago or so, we had the first study that we did, and I thought it was very important because we don't have something like this for Hawaii. We have a lot of economic information, we have a lot of demographic information, but we don't put it together to look at the long term and what that is going to hold for us. And so when you do put that together in the long term, you see some things that maybe you didn't think about before, and I think other people will see different things. The other thing that surprised me was that when we wrote that first study, we had not had the COVID epidemic. And I was more optimistic then about our ways that we could respond to deal with aging in Hawaii. And we sort of lost 10 years. We were not able to respond in those ways. And I think the thing that most concerned me was that spending on children did not grow. And spending on education did not grow. Healthcare, yes, but not education. And, you know, when we talk about aging, we tend to focus on seniors, but really, it's the next generation that we need to care about the most because they're the ones who are going to provide the support that we need going forward.
I'm seeing a lot of head nods from this half of the table.
Yeah, absolutely. I think his Andy's point about having that younger generation ensuring you have a combination of things. I appreciate that you talked about not just the economic side of the value of people, the fact that people are getting older and, you know, maybe not contributing financially, but contributing in an entirely different way. And recognizing that we need our young families to remain in Hawaii, to have that continue to actually grow, because you're going to need, as you said, when you get older, you know, from my perspective, you want to have your grandchildren and children around so that when Tutu or whoever needs to be cared for, families here versus living somewhere else. So I think to me, the report helps what we all anecdotally know, like you said, but it really puts it in stark clarity of how significant an issue it is. And more importantly, what I think it says is this is going to be a huge, enormous challenge if we don't start doing something sooner.
For all of your respective organizations that you're representing today, what concerns you most about Andy's research?
Well, I will say from Aloha United Way's perspective, you know, we work and we support 300 partner agencies, nonprofits, community-based organizations across Oahu and through the state. And we hear from a lot of those partners that they are seeing more kūpuna come to them for services than ever before. And that's a real concern. They are seeing more kūpuna needing housing support, right? Expressing housing insecurity. Big concern, especially because they have special needs. You know, they can't just go to any affordable housing. There's, you know, accessibility issues. And so we really do need to be thinking about housing that's accessible for kūpuna, but even access to fresh food. I mean, as we age, of course, we tend to have a few more medical conditions, and maybe access to fresh and healthy food is much more important. So how can we ensure that we have those programs in place? There's isolation, mental health. This is also a real concern for our kūpuna because they're losing their social capital, and we don't want to do that. So really, to Andy's point, I love looking at it as an opportunity to take folks who have this rich life experience. How do we engage with them to make sure that they are contributing back, because they do have so much to give? And it's a question of, can we put the programs in place where we really are able to harness what they can provide, because they can do so much.
Lee, you're our housing expert tonight. Is there enough housing for our aging population, and what do you think needs to be done if there's not enough?
Absolutely. Housing is a struggle regardless of what demographic you're in. I think what I appreciated about your report, Andy, was that it really quantifies what we had been feeling and seeing both here but internationally. The first direct line comparison I think of is Japan and what they've been going through the last 10, 15 years, and how there's a lot of similarities, but a lot of differences as well. But the solution, as much as the report did a great job of segmenting these issues, I think the focus has to be on the fact that the solution is not a senior-only solution, and it requires, at Housing Hawaii's Future, we advocate for the young voices that are often unheard, but it is our duty to be part of this solution as well for our parents, our grandparents' generation, and we believe housing is one of those key parts of that, but ignoring it, we can't be complicit in just letting it go by. So,
do you have any recommendations for maybe viewers who are watching, who are looking to get affordable senior housing? What's their first step? Where do they look to if they're, in that boat?
That's a good question. 211. Michelle's organization has some great resources. I think holistically, even outside of just housing, the governor's housing dashboard has a great compendium of resources of current housing projects for seniors, as well as things that are upcoming that folks would want to look into. Yeah.
I know we're talking about housing right now, and maybe that is definitely a piece of this question, but is there enough resources? Are there enough resources? It's not just housing, right? It's there's long-term care, short-term care, nursing homes. Kealiʻi, maybe this is something that AARP can weigh in. Do you feel that there's enough resources?
Oh, there never are. And the truth of the matter is, it's a combination of things, right? It's everything from actually housing. You even have situations where, from a workforce housing perspective, if people are unable, even if they're able to get a well-paying job here in Hawaii, but can't afford to raise their family here, they're going to leave, right? So you've got a workforce housing issue, being able to have people who can, again, be here to take care of folks. But you see that in the home and community-based services. So those are people who come into your home. We were talking earlier, and one of the things we talked about was, once someone buys their home, they want to age in place, what we call aging in place. So they want to be able to stay there. They don't want to actually have to go into a nursing home. Well, in order to do that, there's so many different types of support that's needed. And no, there's not enough. And it gets everything from compensation, the whole issue around. So it's just, the challenge, I think, is that there's no one silver bullet, right? And it really is looking at the whole scope of what all those issues are. And so I like that we're talking about housing, but also, you're right, the healthcare component, the cost of healthcare. I mean, there's just a whole range of issues that I think, in many ways, it's kind of like figuring out which one to hit on first, and or multiple ones, and just slowly chunk away at that. I think part of our challenge is we often want to go in there with the big plan that's going to fix everything, and it's just not going to get passed through the state legislature because it's just too significant. But I think the healthcare piece, I appreciate the point about younger people. You know, from AARP's perspective, we believe that when we serve older adults, we actually serve everybody because, you know, whether it's a pedestrian issue, moms who have strollers or kind of have the similar challenge with someone who's in a wheelchair or a walker. But many older adults are grandparents, are parents, and so they want to be able to ensure that their family can survive and do well here in Hawaii and don't leave. So I think this broader point of the report of saying more has to happen in the area of education is key, and doing more to keep Hawaii's young people here, I think I believe is one of the most critical things that we need to have happen.
I think your answer kind of leads into this viewer question. So I'm going to read this one from Eric in Kailua. He's asking, the study sounds not only important, but almost critical. How do we get the people who can affect the needed changes to pay attention? Maybe I'll open up for everybody.
We have a show like this, right?
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
What do you guys think?
I think there is this non-philosophical question of, I think everybody in the room understands we need change, we need growth, but what does that actually take? And I think if we dig deep, really, it's going to take some concessions from everyone to pitch in to come to a holistic solution. I think whether you're at city council or at the state legislature or in grassroots and private sector, there seems to be a recurring theme of, sure, but I'm not going to be the first one to pitch in. I want to see what somebody else is going to do first. But this stalemate is what's making it difficult to find that consensus. And I think the disparity happens between, yes, I want change, but what am I willing to do for that? And I don't think it is unique to this issue of super aging, but really a lot of our issues, but especially for this one, it's like, what is the first step and who's willing to take it?
So to me, I think one of the big challenges of trying to deal with aging is that it involves so many different parts of our society. So there are aging centers, in governments, but really that's not the people you want to talk to. It's the housing ministry or the director of education, or it's the people who are running economic pension programs and the people who are doing all these different things. And so there's this whole broad set of issues that you have to deal with, and it's hard to get the society focused on those. Compounding that problem in Hawaii is that it's not just state and local government that's involved in this. There's a federal government that has a huge command over the economic resources that we have, if not how those programs are implemented, which is what we have to do. But the other thing is that it depends a lot on just family, people here. They have to prepare. They have to do the things that are necessary to make sure that they can have a good life when they get older. And so, I don't know, we've got to provide education, or we have to encourage more healthy behavior, that sort of thing. So it's just it's a huge problem, but then we have huge resources to deal with it. So,
is AARP, do you all do anything to try and voice your concerns about the situation that we are in today?
Like many of us at the table, we absolutely engage at the state legislature on legislation that we believe is going to be important for preparing people for as they age. One example, which is where Andy and I met each other, is AARP pushed for legislation for retirement savings, as an example. We're clear that if people save now, young people, save now, when they get older, their need to rely on social services will diminish. Because one, we know there's not many companies provide pensions anymore. You have some companies that do 401ks and others where people actually save. But about 170,000 of Hawaii's people who work here had no easy way to save for retirement. So we passed legislation to do that. Lee's working on things related to, again, affordable housing, social services, and providing ways for that to occur. So really engaging and getting people to engage. So what I appreciate that Andy talked about is, all of us realizing and working as family. I think if we as a society just worry about my children, my parents, my grandparents, that's where it all starts falling apart. Even if whether I have children or don't have children, I need to care about the fact that children need to be cared for, and recognize that we're all connected. I think that's the key. And that's why I think hopefully, things are better here in Hawaii because of that sense of connectivity, but we can and have kind of lost it. So trying to get to a point where we actually care, well, not actually, but really seeing how we're interconnected, and again, not so much focused on what's in it for me, but how can I make a difference for everybody? And because that's, again, in the long term going to be important. I know you were thinking about some of that too.
Yeah, absolutely. And, with the most recent Alice report, we saw, and we were very alarmed, and it's kind of confirmed in your report that, the aging population, that affects every generation, right? It's not just an issue for those people who are in that population or maybe the next generation down. It really does affect everyone. And the concern is, we can't keep seeing this out-migration happen, because then we do lose the supports that we need, right? We lose the caregivers that we're going to need. But there are some bright spots, and I will say that, our health systems, right? They do a community health needs assessment. They're very attuned to this issue, and it is a bright spot because they've started some innovative programs to really train up the next generation of nurses, aides, and the healthcare workers that we are going to need. Especially to take care of the increased needs of our aging population. So there are definitely some bright spots. I think there are, organizations that are really stepping up in town, seeing this need and anticipating it and acting accordingly, So that is definitely a bright spot. But we do have to make sure that we are doing all the things that create a vibrant economy so that we don't have folks leaving for the continent thinking that's the only way that they can really thrive.
And, there are a lot of folks who are caring for an elderly family member, whether it be in their own home or they, take care of that elderly family member who's in long-term care. Can maybe you all weigh in on the financial burden or impact, though, on families, because it's no surprise it's expensive to get the resources. And Michelle, you mentioned this earlier, but also the mental toll as well. So are there affordable resources to help those families who are caring for an elderly family member?
Affordable is the key word there, huh?
We don't do much in the United States about this, I would say. I mean, at least with programs, with federal programs or state programs, we, unlike Japan, say, or Germany, where there's a lot of economic support for people to take care of seniors. So in Germany, they pay people to stay at home and care for their parents. In Japan, they pay for, I don't know if they've started paying for people who are taking care of their own parents. They're talking about it, but they certainly pay for people to bring in caregivers. And that's something that our country has been lacking in is my impression, but maybe I should be corrected about
Well,
that.
no, I think so. In Hawaii, we have different types of programs, but they aren't that progressive per se, and a lot of it's a financial issue. But I do know there's what they call respite care programs, and they call it kūpuna care. So again, the state provided funding so that if you have to go to work, and because you need to work, you don't have someone to care for your loved one, there's a stipend, so to speak, for you to be able to have your loved one go to what they call adult daycare facility. So those types of things. The things that we tried to pass recently along those same lines, we hope we'll have some progress at some point, but one bill died, which was a caregiver tax credit. We know that most caregivers spend on average $7,200 a year caring for their loved one of their own funds, because oftentimes the person you're caring for has some form of income, whether it's Social Security or their pension, that covers some of those costs. But even outside of that, someone who's a caregiver spends about that much out of their own pocket. The other thing we were hoping for, and we're going to work on over this interim, is paid family leave. One of the challenges that absolutely, again, taking care of your loved one. It doesn't have to be your grandparent, your parent. It could be your spouse or even your adult child. There are the older people who are having to care for their adult child who needs care as well. So being able to take paid family leave and not be in the situation of, gosh, do I lose my job or take care of the person I love? So there's those types of things. Again, they're kind of these small, well, not small, they're huge steps in the right direction. And it's just trying to figure out how to make that happen. Again, it's those, and I'm familiar with that, but there's probably so much more out there. Again, even especially on the issue of housing. We talked a little bit about that and the fact that you have basically what they call different levels of AMI, meaning people who are really, really struggling and aren't able to, they're kind of actually below ALICE families. And then you have ALICE families who themselves are having a challenge, basically living paycheck to paycheck or one paycheck away from being homeless. And then you have those who have jobs, but they still have a family and can't afford to buy a home. So there's just a range of that, right?
Yeah. I think also going back to one of the points that you made earlier about young folks finding their way elsewhere outside of Hawaii. I mean, just anecdotally, our family is trying to figure out how, actually for the past 5 years, how we're going to help Grandma age in place. She's going to be 90 next year. And I think we feel fortunate because we have myself and my uncles and extended family to do that. But as the younger generation leaves, that infrastructure goes away and those resources go away. And now there's more and more of a reliance on social services, government subsidies, things like that. So outside of just a Band-Aid to fix something that's ongoing, I think holistically in the grand scheme of what the composition of Hawaii looks like, we've traditionally leaned into the multi-generational living as a strength, not a cost burden to families. And I think going back to that core strength of us as Hawaii and the community that surrounds kūpuna is something we need to figure out how we can get back to.
Yep, and do more of.
Yeah.
Can I jump in here for just, I want to raise one thing. I mean, we talk a lot about the immigration in the context of having our kids come back or having our kids stay here.
Yeah.
But a huge amount of the support that's being provided to kūpuna doesn't come from kids. It comes from a lot of immigrants who are coming to Hawaii and are providing a lot of services. I mean, I was in the hospital here, and who was taking care of me? Filipinos, almost exclusively. And so we are dependent on immigrants, not just of our own family members, but immigrants from many different places are part of our strength.
I think what you're saying is Hawaii doesn't have enough local, like nurses, for example. We're deficient 1,000 nurses across all healthcare systems, but the UH and the community colleges are not producing that. So we do need that skilled labor from mainland offshore to be able to supplement and provide that infrastructure that you're talking about.
Yes, and that's where Hawaii Pacific Health, Kaiser Permanente, they are starting these at Waipahu High School, right? For example, they're starting their program to train
Academy.
high school students, and now they're going to open that up to adults as well. So those are some of the exciting things to, yes, make sure that we have the folks that are available to do the care. And I'll just say too that a lot of our community-based organizations are providing kind of a patchwork of kūpuna care, right? Whether it's Meals on Wheels. I mean, they're really, if folks cannot afford in-home dedicated healthcare, which is very expensive, they're trying to sort of piecemeal that together with our nonprofits. And of course, with the federal funding situation, which we really haven't talked about yet, threats to Medicaid, that's
You don't want to live
also
that trauma?
kind of a more near-term issue that we're going to be having to figure out how we can plug that gap.
I think what you all just talked about is actually a perfect segue to Moses's question. He's asking, does the panel believe that young people feel that part of their kuleana is to help kūpuna, the older members of our community? That is a very Hawaiian way of thinking, but there are a number of people in Hawaii now who did not grow up thinking that way. How do we change that? I know it's another loaded question.
I think it's recognizing that part of our kuleana is helping other people who move to Hawaii learn more about Hawaii. For me, I sat on that fence and, kind of like, were unhappy that people who came didn't know how to do stuff here. And I realized my father had come from Massachusetts. And he was like, I felt like he was born and raised here. I recognized that the way my dad fit in was my mom's family embraced him and taught him. And that was the kuleana. They could have just been like, oh, this guy's bad and let's just ostracize him. It's taking that step, swallowing our pride to some degree, opening our arms and bringing people in and helping them learn. Because they're not going to know. They didn't necessarily. I mean, it's not like the aloha spirit and all of that is unique to Hawaii. People call it something somewhere else. But that caring for family is also a very strong Asian tradition as well. And so all of that combined, but I'm sure it's an issue for a lot of cultures, and it just so happens that hopefully we can again reinforce what Moses is saying. But I think it's that extended family approach, the caring for your neighbor, the helping a stranger. I think one of the things that's so beautiful about Hawaii is, sometimes when you see somebody on the side of the road needing help, you actually stop to help them versus being afraid to stop and help them. And so working at that and just recognizing that, back in the day, I'm sure everybody's grandma, how we call everyone auntie, uncle, that type of thing. It's that connectedness and caring about each person, It's like, that might not be my grandma, but it's somebody's grandma.
100%.
Right?
Yeah. I think it's a very symbiotic relationship where our kūpuna instill in the younger generation what aloha is. And the result that we want is our kids to stay here to perpetuate that, right? Is that actually happening? I think that's where the real concern is. In our circles, especially in housing, one of the hot topic discussions is locals. What is a local, right? Because especially in this legislative session, one of the things we've talked a lot about is a local only housing market. But how do you define that? And it's a very nuanced conversation. But kind of to your point, somebody who has moved here 5 years ago, but maybe exudes everything that we want and expect out of that aloha spirit, is that person less local than somebody who's lived here all of their lives but doesn't let somebody into their lane in traffic, right? So how do we actually define that? What are the nuances? It is a very loaded, loaded question.
No, I agree with you.
We have some viewer comments, quite a few of them actually. So I think I might go one by one and read them, and then let you all weigh in. Does that sound good? Leslie from Kaneohe, this is partly a question, but she's asking, is there any logic, kind of segue from what we were just talking about, is there any logic to having these discussions in the school system, even as part of curriculum, to help young people understand how society works and the roles we all play?
100%.
Yeah, absolutely.
100%, absolutely.
I think previously you were at American Savings Bank, and one of their big initiatives was financial literacy. I think and that was a big deal in the legislature this year as well. It starts in the school system, and I know that's a little bit of a departure from the Aloha and the local spirit, but I think it's a trickle down effect of when you're struggling, is that the focus, right? Anymore? So.
One of the things that makes me think of, I feel like there was a program at Star of the Sea School, because they're next to Kahalanui, where I feel like maybe they may not have been doing it, but I feel like there was an opportunity to bring the kūpuna together with the youngsters, and there was so much enriching behavior and engagement and connection that happened as a result. I have seen that happen on the continent, where senior housing is situated next to the child care, right? So that the kūpuna do feel connected. And so maybe in some subtle ways like that, that is a way to instill the importance of taking care of every generation, right? Because that really is the Aloha spirit. So I like that idea. And maybe maybe we're putting that out into the universe for folks to think about.
You need to talk to the right people to get more of those programs set up.
There is a school, maybe, I don't know where it is, but anyway, they were offering financial literacy to third graders. And, teaching them about retirement and interest and so on and so forth. So this is filtering, these ideas are filtering around the state and have been.
That should be a required for everybody.
Absolutely.
Glenn from Maui has a comment. He's saying there's a big gap for help available to seniors who do not have family but want to age in place. For older people, trying to figure out how to help for house care and stuff like that is a challenge. You have to be almost dying to qualify for help from the state. Can any of you weigh in on that comment?
I will just say, so Aloha United Way runs the 211 statewide helpline, and fully 1/4 of the calls that come into our helpline are from kūpuna. And many of their questions are typical needs that we see, right? Housing, food, utility support. But the number one reason that kūpuna call the 211 statewide helpline is they've heard something on the news, they read it in the newspaper, and they want to know, how does this affect me? Should I be concerned about this? And they want to call and talk story to the 211 information and resource specialists. And sometimes, and they are often multiple callers, right? And multiple time callers. So that shows us that there really is that lack of connection, that need to really take care of our kūpuna and get them connected up to the resources. So we do give them the referrals, of course, but they're being given so much more, because they're also just having that connection with someone who's listening to their concerns, and kind of helping to point them in the right direction.
I can't imagine too the stress and mental load, not only on them, their families, but to have to take care of yourself too, and to be by yourself.
Right.
Caregiving is one of the most challenging, rewarding, stressful, beautiful experiences, right? And it's often something you aren't prepared for. All of a sudden, in my case, my mother had a stroke. It wasn't something we were realizing, boom, immediately after she's out of the hospital, she needed 24/7 care. So it's not something you can always plan for, but Glenn's point of whether it's Maui, Kauai, Honolulu, Hawaii Island, or anywhere, getting those services to be able to have folks who can come in, just help you with bathing, you know, your loved one, being able to care for them for a bit so you can run out, or how about just have time so you can get a break, right, for a moment. And so that lends itself back to that program of having in the schools, high school, getting more people interested in caregiving and having them, you know, because one of the challenges is you have kind of just a range of jobs. The ones that take up a lot of the folks who do caregiving or could be caregivers in these situations are hospitals. They pay more. Next are nursing homes. So you've got, even between the workforce, you've got nursing homes competing with the hospitals, but then you work your way towards then people who can come into your home and help. They're going to go for the higher paying jobs. So how do you get it so that these other jobs, these other situations pay better? So I think it's getting more people to be interested. You know, we talked about financial literacy. I would love to see something called caregiving literacy, right? Where people learn, because at some point we're all going to care for someone or be cared for. So caregiving literacy, you know, maybe that's another course. You know, poor Department of Education. There's so many things. There's so many things we want you to educate our children on. But again, like, you know, caregiving literacy. Glenn's right. It's getting more people into the workforce is going to be the way to make that happen. I've seen situations where on some islands where people are like, I'm willing to pay whatever it's going to cost to have somebody come in, but there's no one to have come in. So it's kind of like getting folks interested in that issue, which is what the schools are trying to do, is have people see that caregiving is actually it's a long-term job. There's going to be a whole lot of people needing it, that's for sure.
Okay, I have two kind of polar opposite comments about aging in place, and I think they're both pretty interesting. So I'm gonna read one, and then maybe we can talk about it, and then read the other. Jan wrote in saying, aging in place is not necessarily the best solution. My mom finally moved into assisted living at 99. She wanted to know why she needed to move. She was very social, and she was not getting the social engagement that she needed. She was very happy, though, in her assisted living apartment. Her kids went to visit her probably more because we realized the needs for frequent visits. Is that something that you all hear often, same perspective?
I think it's going to be different for different folks. You know, for our situation with my mom, I'm certain it would not have worked for her to go somewhere else. Being in her surroundings and being surrounded by family made a difference. But there are people who, in fact, we were lucky that we could take care of our mom. Some people have a different need and higher levels of need that family cannot fill. And so assisted living or other situations, again, we were able to all share time. There was like 5 of us. But if you're an only child caring for your parent, sometimes being able to go to an adult have your loved one be in an adult residential care home where they can get, you know, care all the time because you can't do it. You know, I don't think there's a thing to say that doing that is a bad thing, right?
Not at all.
It's
so many factors, right?
That you've got to make it work for you and your loved one.
I think this, in a way, it's about getting rid of impediments to staying at home. So a lot of homes are built, you know, with stairs, or they have narrow doorways, or, you know, they don't have rails for when you get in the shower. So it's just making it safer and easier for people to continue to live where they are.
Yep.
Just giving more options.
And as long as they're safe, right?
Yeah, and Jan's right. I mean, it might not be best. I mean, I think lots of surveys have shown that most people want to age in place. Doesn't mean they all can and should. That's a different story.
And then this person, an anonymous viewer, but wrote in saying all the talk of out-migration involves younger people. Older members of our population don't really have that option. Moving is expensive and can be complicated. We know this place, our home, our neighborhood, our supermarket, Kealiʻi, what you were just saying. Essentially, we cannot leave. We need our young people to stay. It seems like our leaders just don't recognize this. Thoughts on that comment?
I've
Who
had
wants
so
to
many
answer it?
friends leave. You know, for many people, you know, having your children leave is very painful, and that's been the case for me. But also having my contemporaries leave has been very painful.
Yeah.
And a lot of them are doing that. I don't know if that's a general experience or just my own, but
Yeah.
I don't think it's just your own. I mean, a lot of the work that we do surrounds exactly that, and it is a shared experience that we're seeing in the stats. We're seeing anecdotally. I always talk about my wife's family. Every 4th of July, we'll do a barbecue in Hauula. They've been doing it for the last 30 years, and it was vibrant, multi-generational, tons of people. And they told us last month, next year is the last year they're going to do that. And it's because the kids have gone, they haven't come back. And the anonymous viewers, right? Like the younger generation that we need to be the teachers, the nurses, the infrastructure to support our kūpuna. Like I said, it's a holistic solution. It requires us to be here to be able to facilitate that aging in place, whether that's in place or other solutions. So
Yeah.
And you do have older people leaving because in some cases, retiring in Hawaii isn't that
Yeah.
great either.
Absolutely.
And so where I've seen contemporaries who are older leave, it's because they found a really wonderful independent living facility that has a range so they can be independent, and over time if they need more care, and it costs a third of what that might cost here in Hawaii. Or your children are in the mainland and they have grandbabies now, and you're here alone, you're like, well, I'd rather go where my grandchildren are, right? So that happens as well. I mean, I don't know what you're seeing.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah.
This goes back to, Andy, you actually mentioned this a little bit. Sam is asking, is there anything that can be done in our homes to help people age in place, like grab bars or other improvements to help kūpuna mobility?
oh, you guys. Not me.
Well, AARP does happen to have on our website information for, it's called Home Fit. It's a home fit guide around what you can do. Couple of things, not just care for them should they need special accommodations to your home, but also what you can put in place to prevent people from getting hurt in the first place. You talked about stairs, tripping, rugs. I mean, it's a combination of things. So it's a great guide because one of the challenge often is too that we see with, again, older adults, and it doesn't mean just because you're old, you're somehow frail. There are people who are very vibrant and such. It really is more a matter of your health more than your age as relates to the challenges you might experience. But that first fall often when you're in your 60 plus years of age is just the beginning. So trying to prevent it from the get-go.
Andy, your study talks about how the aging population consumes more than they contribute financially. And this is a question for you, but I think everybody can weigh in. What are the trickle-down effects going to be on our economy as our society ages? And maybe not just economically too, but just some other trickle-down effects.
Trickle-down effects. I'm going to have to think about that. I don't know what trickle-down effects there are particularly. Consumption adds value to the people who are consuming, of course, and it's very important to them. And we need workers, and it provides jobs for people who are working on those things. That's going to be a very difficult issue. Somehow I don't feel like the sense of that has come to the fore enough in this discussion. Is that, we talk about, well, we need to train people more to provide caregiving and so forth. Well, we need more people to do that. We need young people. It doesn't, and I think we also need to not just think about people who were raised in Hawaii.
Immigrants.
I think any society benefits from having an influx of new people and from different places, and we want to encourage those people to come here as well. We are not doing this now, but we need to be, and we need those people to help us deal with aging issues.
And maybe this part two of the question I had kind of relates to the consuming more, but like what's going to happen with healthcare for our elderly? Is there going to be a waiting list if there's not enough
Yes.
resources?
Yes.
If there aren't already?
There are going to be waiting lists, and they're going to be longer. It's going to be difficult.
And one of the key pieces, although I'm not a good example of it, is prevention. You know, the truth is if you take care of yourself and can stave off the need for care is one of the best things you can provide to everybody in your family, in truth, and society in that way. And when you talk about the consumption issue, you know, what Andy's talking about is the fact that they do need care. They're going to need health care. They're going to need different kinds of support. And the point of not earning more is part of where his point about the deficit. But keep in mind, if you save for retirement, you have your Social Security, and you have enough, your consumption is basically utilizing the resources you have. Where it becomes a deficit is when you haven't saved enough, and the need to care for you is so high that you can't cover it. So taxpayers are having to cover that gap. And again, I think that's, you know, Andy's point is I don't think it's clear enough for people that we are looking at a significant issue right around the corner as it relates to our ability to take care of, again, we say kūpuna, but at some point, well, I'm already almost there, but someday you're going to be there,
right.
and
That's right.
we want to make sure when you get there too that there's
Right.
going to be, even for you,
Yeah.
there's going to be that support, and we're not well poised for that yet. And your
No, we're
point
not.
about looking at other ways to bring in workforce, yeah, we shouldn't be shying away from, if there are people who want to come to Hawaii and want to take on those jobs to help us care for our loved ones or whatever the case may be, we ought to be making that a whole lot easier.
Kealiʻi, I think this is a question for you, but can the average senior on a fixed income afford their care and to retire here or to live here in their elder years? I think I know the answer, but.
When you say average, I'd say not if it's just Social Security alone. So average Social Security is about $1,800 a month. If that's your only income, it would be very difficult to live on your own.
Right.
So that's where extended families come in, right? So if it's you and your grandma and your, you know, again, multiple people, that worked for my family because with that limited income, no, I think it's very difficult to have that, to be able to do that. Again, unless you're someone who in your 20s and 30s, it got drilled into you to save, you might be able to do that and not having a family member available. Or the other thing that people have done is bought into long-term care insurance as another way that some people prepared for the eventuality of when they might need help. Not a lot of people have done that, and it's extremely expensive.
And if you're looking for numbers, 37% of kūpuna are below the ALICE threshold, which means they do not have enough income to really meet a basic household survival budget. So that's a pretty high percentage considering they've already gone through their prime earning years. They've, you know, done all the things, and 37% of them still can't make it here without some other support.
Yeah, we just have a few minutes left. Michelle, can you touch on how the Aloha United Way is preparing to help support even more of our community members as our society ages?
Sure. Well, you know, Aloha United Way, we have one of our big programs is the Safety Net program, which supports the community-based organizations that are providing those supports to our kūpuna. And of course, the 211 statewide helpline, we're constantly improving the resources that are there so that when our kūpuna do call, again, they're 1/4 of our calls to the 211 statewide helpline, that we have the resources that they're looking for readily available.
We just have 2 minutes left. Yeah. Any last words, Kealiʻi, that you would like to tell our viewers?
I think the main thing is that caregiving is just one of the most rewarding experiences you can have, but it's difficult if you're doing it alone. So having a safety net, a different kind of safety net, of family members and caregivers or friends who help you in that job. Don't try to do it alone. But importantly, to the broader community, people who are watching, get involved. I mean, we cannot do this alone. I'm not talking about just caregiving, but just making the difference. We talked about that earlier, is what's it going to take? It's really going to take everyone. It can't be where you think to yourself, only my legislator or, you know, this particular person. Everyone absolutely has to get involved. Get involved.
I wish we had more time, but Lee, anything that you want to say either about resources or to our community?
I just want to make sure that we understand that this is not just an academic exercise. As much as this is just a study, it's not just stats and figures. These are real people, and we're running out of time, right? The action, it requires action, and it could be, you know, for us it's through housing, but at the very least, I think for the viewers, just having these conversations and raising the awareness, talking about it a lot more will go a long way to raising the profile of this issue.
Thank you all so much for being here tonight. Andy, thank you for all your hard work with a very important study that hopefully more folks after tonight will dive into it and read it. We want to thank our guests in studio, Andy Mason from UHERO and Lee Wang from Housing Hawaii's Future, and Kealiʻi Lopez from AARP Hawaii, and Michelle Bartell from Aloha United Way. Next week on Insights, we are looking into agriculture crime. Last year, ag crimes cost Hawaii's farm producers almost $13 million. These crimes often go unreported. Please join us next week for the discussion. I'm Lauren Day for Insights on PBS Hawaii. Have a great night.
Local broadcasts of Insights on PBS Hawaiʻi are made possible by the support of viewers like you. Mahalo.